All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep on a case that's both fascinating and disturbing.
Yeah.
We're looking into Anthony Guy Walker,
Oh, okay.
a serial killer who was in Michigan for over a decade.
Wow. Over a decade.
Yeah, and we've got excerpts from his Wikipedia page, and
Oh.
trust me, you're going to want to hear this. So what we're trying to do is we're going to try to understand how this guy managed to avoid justice for so long, and why his story's like a chilling reminder that there's darkness out there.
Yeah, there's always darkness lurking.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about Walker is that it's not just about the murders, it's about how the system failed and allowed him to keep doing these awful things.
Yeah, it's a much bigger picture.
It is.
So let's start putting the pieces together.
Huh?
Walker was born in 1957 in Adrian, Michigan.
Okay.
And even before his first murder, his life was already kind of violent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a career criminal with a bunch of offenses.
So there were signs early on.
Yeah, really troubling stuff.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you say those early offenses are important clues to his psychology?
Yeah, for sure.
Like his behavior, it seemed to escalate over time.
Like a ticking time bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it makes you think, were there any missed opportunities to stop him?
Right. Could someone have intervened?
Yeah, before things got so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
But for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And in 1975, when he was only
18.
Walker committed his first known murder.
Wow.
He killed 24-year-old Arlene Salcedo.
How awful.
Her body was found decomposed in a field.
Decomposed.
Yeah, and they couldn't figure out how she died.
So that makes it really hard to find the killer.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, because her body was so decomposed, there probably wasn't much evidence left.
Yeah, and no kidding.
It basically gave Walker a free pass.
Yeah, and that's not all.
Oh, no.
Later that year, Walker was arrested for kidnapping and raping a woman.
Oh, my gosh.
And he pled guilty to second-degree criminal sexual conduct.
And what does that mean exactly?
Well, it means he forced himself on her.
Oh, I see.
And it carries a serious penalty in Michigan.
Okay.
And he spent a few years in prison, but he was paroled in early January of 1979.
Okay.
And here's where things get really bad.
Oh.
Only a few weeks after he got out, Walker committed his most notorious crime.
Okay.
The triple murder of Yolanda Torres Madison,
Oh, gosh.
her 11-month-old daughter, Jessica, and Teresa Carey.
This is the one that everyone remembers.
It is.
Yeah.
And it was really brutal.
What happened?
Well, he broke into their home.
Mm-hmm.
He tied them up and beat them.
Oh, no.
And then he shot them. And then he set the house on fire.
The house on fire.
And baby Jessica died from smoke inhalation.
It's just awful.
I know. Just pure cruelty.
It is.
It's hard to imagine what those women went through.
Yeah.
And an innocent baby caught in the middle of it all.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. This case really shook the community.
I bet.
People were outraged, and there was this huge search for the killer, but nothing turned up.
So the case went cold.
It did, for over 30 years. It's a long time to live with that kind of unsolved trauma.
It is. Yeah, and back then they didn't have the same tools we have today.
It was limited.
Yeah, it must have been like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
I guess Walker was really good at hiding his crimes.
This sounds like it.
And he seemed to pick his victims very carefully.
What do you mean?
Well, he often went after people who were on the edges of society.
People who wouldn't be missed as much.
Exactly.
That's chilling.
It is. And while the search for the triple homicide killer was going nowhere, Walker kept doing terrible things.
Oh, man.
In 1980, he was part of a murder for hire.
Murder for hire.
Yeah, he killed 28-year-old Floyd Beatty.
And why did he do that?
Seems like it was all about the money.
So money was his motive.
Yeah, another piece of the puzzle.
It is. It's interesting because it shows that he was capable of killing for profit.
Yeah, not just out of anger or anything.
Right. It was premeditated.
It was cold-blooded.
Yeah.
And in 1983, he assaulted 3 teenage girls.
Teenage.
He pretended to be a police officer to get them into his car.
That's terrifying.
It is. Thankfully, he let them go, but it could have been another horrible crime.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what made him change his mind.
It's impossible to know.
Yeah, you never know what's going on in someone's head.
But what's clear is that Walker was a master manipulator.
He knew how to blend in.
Yeah, and how to take advantage of situations.
And he didn't stop even when he went to prison.
No, he didn't. In 1986, while he was serving time for assault,
He
arranged for another inmate to be killed.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Daniel Staggs.
Wow, so even prison couldn't stop him.
It couldn't. So how did this guy get away with so much for so long?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. He was clearly a danger to everyone.
It seems like he just slipped through the cracks.
Repeatedly.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
So there are a lot of reasons why he got away with it.
Like what?
Well, back then, forensic science wasn't as good as it is now, and Walker was really good at hiding his crimes.
But there was one thing that finally changed everything.
What was that?
A breakthrough in 2010.
Oh, wow. A breakthrough after all those years.
Yeah, so tell me about it. What finally brought him down?
Well, it all came down to DNA technology.
DNA.
Yeah, they re-examined the evidence from the 1979 murders.
The triple homicide.
Yes, and they got a match
A match to Walker.
to Anthony Guy Walker.
Wow, so they finally got him.
They did.
But wait, if they caught him for the 1979 murders, how did they find out about his other crimes?
Well, he confessed.
He confessed.
He did, and that's where things take an even darker turn.
Yeah. So Walker confessed to the murders, and that's just the beginning.
Oh, wow. What do you mean?
Well, his own lawyer, Robert Jameson,
Okay.
he said that he thinks Walker could be responsible for over 30 murders.
30 murders.
Yeah. And not just in Michigan.
So in other states, too?
Possibly, yeah.
Wow. Are we talking like another Ted Bundy here?
That's what it's starting to look like.
That's scary. It is. And Jameson said that Walker didn't just say he did more murders.
Well-
He actually gave details about them.
What kind of details?
Like where they happened, when they happened, and even what the victims looked like.
So if they can prove what he said,
Yeah,
he could be one of the worst serial killers ever.
it's a terrifying thought.
It is.
Yeah.
The thought of all those victims and their families never getting answers.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the 1979 murders. What happened with that case?
Okay, so Walker was only tried and convicted for the murders of Yolanda Torres Madison, her daughter Jessica, and Teresa Carey.
Okay.
The trial was a big deal in Adrian.
I bet. After all that time,
Yeah,
did the families get any closure from the trial?
yeah, in a way,
How so?
they got to give victim impact statement.
Okay.
And they talked about how much pain Walker caused.
It must have been emotional.
It was.
It's a good reminder that these aren't just stories.
No.
Real people were hurt by this.
Yeah, the trial really showed how dedicated those cold case investigators were.
Yeah, they never gave up.
And they finally caught Walker thanks to DNA technology.
It really shows how important it is to never lose hope.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder if things could have been different.
What do you mean?
Well, if they had DNA technology back then,
Right.
could they have stopped Walker sooner?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah. But it makes you think about how important science is
It does.
and how it can help us solve crimes
Yeah,
and hold people accountable.
absolutely.
So we need to keep investing in science,
For sure. Because who knows how many other cold cases are out there.
waiting to be solved.
Exactly.
But let's get back to Walker's lawyer's claim.
Okay.
Did they ever find more evidence about those other potential murders?
So that's where things get a little unclear.
Really?
Yeah, Walker's lawyers seemed pretty sure that Walker was guilty of those other murders,
Okay.
but they never charged him with any more crimes.
Huh.
And nobody's talking about any new investigations.
So we don't know if they found anything.
Nope.
So there could be more victims out there.
It's possible, and their families might never know what happened.
That's a tough thought.
It is.
So how did Walker get away with it for so long?
Well, I think it was a bunch of things.
Okay.
He was good at picking victims who wouldn't be missed,
Right.
and he knew how to hide his crimes.
But don't you think there were also some failures in the system?
Oh, absolutely.
Like with his early crimes?
You mean the assault and the kidnapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some red flags there.
But nobody did anything.
It seems that way.
It makes you think, what if someone had intervened back then?
Right. Maybe those other tragedies could have been prevented.
It's a hard thing to think about.
It is.
But we can learn from this.
Yes, absolutely.
And try to do better in the future.
We need to have better policies, better training for law enforcement.
Yeah, and try to prevent violence before it happens.
That's a good point.
Instead of just reacting to it after the fact. I
Right.
totally agree. But let's shift gears for a second.
Okay.
What about the psychology of all this?
What do you mean?
Like, what makes someone become a serial killer?
That's a question that a lot of people have.
I know. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
It is.
So what can we learn from studying serial killers?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer,
Okay.
but there are some things that we see a lot.
Like what?
Well, a lot of times they had a really tough childhood.
Like abuse or neglect.
Yes, things like that.
So those early signs that we saw in Walker,
Right.
they might have been more than just bad behavior.
Exactly.
Maybe there were signs of something really dangerous.
That's why it's so important to pay attention to those early warning signs.
In anyone, not just criminals.
Right. Anyone who's acting in a way that's concerning.
So we need to intervene early,
Yes, absolutely.
whether it's therapy or counseling or just being supportive.
It can make a big difference.
It makes you wonder if things could have been different for Walker.
And for his victims.
Yeah, if someone had helped him.
It's impossible to know.
I know. But it shows how important it is to prevent crime.
Instead of just reacting to it.
Right. We need to create a society where people feel supported.
And where they have access to resources.
And where they have other options besides violence.
Absolutely.
But let's go back to Walker for a minute.
Okay.
He gave all those details about other murders.
He did.
If that's all true, what does that tell us about him?
Well, it means he was capable of doing terrible things over and over again.
For years.
Yes.
I guess he must have had no empathy at all.
That's probably true.
Like, he didn't care about his victims.
Right.
And he must have felt powerful controlling other people's lives.
Yeah. Serial killers often see their victims as objects.
Not as human beings.
Exactly.
And that's what's so scary about them.
They look normal on the outside.
But they're hiding a dark secret.
So we need to be aware of the signs.
And be willing to speak up.
If we see something that's not right,
We can't just assume that someone else will take care of it.
it's everyone's responsibility.
To look out for each other.
And to create communities where violence isn't okay.
And where people feel safe asking for help.
Exactly.
We need to stop violence before it starts.
And that's going to take all of us working together.
Individuals, families, communities, everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
So before the break, we were talking about what makes someone become a serial killer. Like, what created this monster, Anthony Guy Walker?
Yeah. It's a tough question.
It is. It's terrifying, but we can't just ignore it.
Right. And like I said, there's no easy answer.
Okay.
But research shows that there are some common things we see in these cases.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, a lot of times they had a really bad childhood, like trauma, abuse, that kind of stuff.
So those early signs we talked about,
Yeah,
like with Walker, maybe they were more than just him being a bad kid.
that's possible.
Maybe it was like a sign of something much worse.
It could have been. Yeah, and that's why it's so important to pay attention to those warning signs early on.
Yeah, not just with potential criminals, but anyone who's showing those kinds of behavior.
Right, exactly. Early intervention is key.
Yeah, whether it's therapy or counseling or just being there for them.
It can really make a difference.
It makes you wonder if things could have been different for Walker and his victims.
Yeah, if someone had stepped in and helped him.
Sad thought.
It is. But unfortunately, we can't change the past.
Yeah, but we can learn from it.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
can try to do better in the future.
Absolutely.
Right.
We need to work on preventing these kinds of things from happening.
Right, not just reacting after it's too late.
Yeah, we need to create a society where people feel supported and they have the resources they need and they have other choices besides violence.
I completely agree.
But going back to Walker for a second, he gave all those details about other potential murders.
Yeah, he did.
If all of that is true, what does that tell us about him?
Well, it means that he was able to keep doing these horrible things for a really long time.
Yeah, for years.
Right, and he probably didn't feel any remorse or guilt at all.
Like he didn't see his victims as real people,
Yeah, a lot of serial killers see their victims as objects.
not as human beings.
Right, and they get a sense of power from controlling and manipulating other people.
That's what makes them so scary.
It is, because they often blend in and seem normal.
But underneath, they're hiding this dark side.
Yeah, so we need to be aware of the signs, and we need to speak up if we see something that seems off.
Exactly. We can't just assume that someone else is going to take care of it.
Right, we all have a responsibility to look out for each other.
And to build communities where violence is not tolerated and where people can ask for help without feeling ashamed.
That's a great point.
We need to work together to stop violence before it even starts.
Absolutely. It takes all of us, individuals, families, communities, everyone.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the case of Anthony Guy Walker.
It's a story that really makes you think.
It does. It's a journey into the darkest parts of humanity, but it also reminds us how important justice and resilience are.
And the power of human connection.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We appreciate you listening.
We'll be back next week with another fascinating story.
Until then, stay safe out there.